the South African National Defence Union has blamed the lack of funding for the ventilation system failure at the South African Air Force's headquarters in Pretoria. The headquarters was shut down following a ventilation system failure. Now, according to the union, the building, which houses 1,200 employees, is now functioning with only 6 out of the roof-mounted temperature control systems. Now, let's discuss this a bit further. We're joined by Pikkie Greeff. Pikkie, good afternoon, and thank you very much for your time.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Perhaps talk us through all the events, starting, because we know that it was since shut down, but starting with that particular statement that you issued, stating or relaying the intolerable conditions that some of the members have to contend with. Just talk us through these issues.
Yeah, so the building is regulated by a temperature and ventilation system. Because it's an insulated building, there are no windows that can open. So one can imagine how important the ventilation and temperature systems are. And so when they break down, it means that inside the building reaches up to 39 degrees Celsius while the employees are inside there. And also the air becomes very polluted and dangerous to breathe, because it's just simply bad air being ventilated through the entire building. And people started getting actually physically sick. And so the union was approached by members, and we tried to highlight these issues to the Chief of the Air Force and the Ministry of Defence, urgently requesting them to intervene and inquiring as to whether they do in fact follow the OHS Act, which means they should have health and safety committee, meeting on this issue, having solutions, etc. Unfortunately, we were not responded to, and we had to then report this to the Department of Labour.
Pardon me for interjecting there, so do they have an Occupational Health and Safety Committee or not?
In name only, as far as we could establish. So it would seem that are transgressing that part of the law, and the Department of Labour did an on-site inspection on last Friday, and then found the conditions to be unacceptable. It issued the Department of Defence with a 7-day notice that if these issues were not fixed within 7 days, the department would close the building. And in the meantime, it seems that the Defence Force Command has decided on its own yesterday to rather than close the building by itself.
But it doesn't solve the problem, because people need to eventually go back there. But whose responsibility is it ultimately to ensure that the infrastructure is up to scratch? Is it the Public Works Department?
It's both departments. It's the Department of Defence that has to report its requirements and its needs to the Department of Public Works, because as we know that the Department of Public Works are the ones responsible for the actual physical maintenance on state-owned buildings. Whether that communication didn't go very well or whatever it is that went wrong between these two departments, it's not clear at this stage. So we would say that both departments bear the responsibility for this, but in the end, the funds must come from the Department of Public Works.
So where to from here on? Is it now shut down indefinitely? What is the situation?
We understand it to be a temporary shutdown according to the Defence decision. That can only indicate in our mind one thing, and that is if it's a temporary shutdown, then the only solution is a quick solution, which is replacing the ventilation system, which is going to cost enormously money. And we hope that that is the outcome, that it is entirely replaced so that our members can go back into that building in a safe and healthy working environment. Certainly to simply make it temporary and not have a definite plan, it's not a solution. So we do believe there is some kind of procurement that will probably happen in the future.
Can you talk to us about the impact that this closure has had on just productivity beyond the impact it's had on their health? Because we know that it's been quite problematic towards their health, but just on productivity this time around.
Yeah, it's obviously negatively impacting productivity. You know, no one can be expected to work in full uniform in 39 degrees Celsius and concentrate and be professional in your job. It's simply physically unbearable. and so it just stands to reason that productivity would lessen. And of course, people get sick and they stay off on sick leave, or they find excuses not to be in the building. And that's really a problem, you know. No modern conventional Air Force headquarters can function in that way.